Picture a young man on the edge of despair, thinking about a dream that seemed impossible and a business on the verge of collapse. That was Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. Phil Knight wasn't born into success. He built it against staggering odds. He began his journey by selling Japanese running shoes from the trunk of his car. Refusing to quit, he created his own brand called Nike. Apparently, this name was inspired by the Greek goddess, which means victory, speed, and strength. Today, that same company, which was once run from the trunk of a car, is a global giant which worth over $80 billion market cap. Nike is also the world's largest supplier of athletic shoes and apparels, operating in more than 170 countries. So how did a young man with a dream and nothing but a car and a trunk and a crazy idea build one of the most iconic brands in history? To understand, let us go back to where it all began. Phil Knight's story begins in the heart of Oregon in the early 1960s. He was a young man with a restless spirit and an obsession with running. Knight had a bold and almost audacious dream, and that is to import high-quality, low-cost running shoes from Japan and sell them to American athletes. At that time, he didn't have the capital or the connection or even the business experience to make it happen. All that he had was an invaluable trait and a burning desire to build something extraordinary. So fresh out of Stanford Business School, Knight crafted a plan inspired by a paper he wrote for a class. He envisioned the wild idea of what if Japanese running shoes could compete with the overpriced German brands dominating the American market. Remember that back then the shoe market was quiet. No one really cared. Adidas and Puma were big, but there wasn't much innovation, most especially in the US. But then Japan was rising in post-war manufacturing. They had quality and efficiency, but what they didn't have was a distributor in the US, and that is exactly where Phil Knight saw his shot. So without wasting much time, Knight booked a flight to Japan with a borrowed money. In Japan, he met with executives of a company called Onitsuka Company. This company was founded by a businessman called Keihachiro Onitsuka in the aftermath of World War II to promote youth health through athletics. Even though Onitsuka was eager to expand into the US market, he had no foothold and also had limited understanding of American consumers. So on that day, Knight walked into the meeting with a sample market strategy, and he believed that he could connect their products with a new wave of American runners. He pitched them on the idea of letting him import and sell shoes in America. The executives were intrigued by his knowledge of sports and impressed by his passion. Despite having no legal company formed, Knight convinced them to give him the US distribution right on the spot, and to his surprise, they said yes. Indeed, this was a bold move for a man in his 20s with no formal business structure, but just enthusiasm and belief in his vision. Phil then returned to Oregon, and later he received his first shipment of boxes of Tiger shoes. He had no office, no store, no employees, just a beat-up Plymouth Valiant and the raw determination to make something work. He hit the pavement, attending local track meets, personally talking to coaches, athletes, and spectators, selling shoes out of the trunk of his car. He also stored inventory in his parents' basement, tracked orders by hand, and handled every sale himself. But it wasn't for long that his former track coach at the University of Oregon, Bill Bowman, became his partner. Now let's take a moment to reflect on Bowman. Bowman wasn't just a coach, he was an innovator. He was a legendary figure in track and field. He had coached dozens of Olympians and was known for his relentless drive to push boundaries in both training and equipment. People know him to be someone not satisfied with the status quo. He often used his athletes as test subjects, tweaking materials, weight, and shape to find the perfect performance edge. He was obsessed with giving runners any edge possible, which led him to constantly experimenting with shoe designs. In 1964, Bowman and Knight together officially created their first company called Blue Ribbon Sports as a distributor of the Japanese company Onitsuka. For years, Knight kept his day job as accountant, grinding through 9 to 5 to just funnel money into the growing but always struggling shoe business. They were constantly short on cash. Every dollar was stretched. Orders would come in faster than they could fill them. Banks turned them down, and Knight went back again and again asking for credit extensions. It was a very exhausting situation. However, the moment that he thought things couldn't get any worse came at a breaking point. Cracks began to form in the relationship between Blue Ribbon and Onitsuka. Apparently, Onitsuka became increasingly wary of Knight's growing influence in the US market and began questioning the exclusivity of their distribution agreement. Tensions rose over disagreements about territory, supply, and control. Knight believed he had exclusive right to sell Tiger shoes in the United States, but Onitsuka began negotiating with other potential distributors behind his back. They also clashed over shipping delays and inconsistent product quality, which put strain on Blue Ribbon's fragile operations. Onitsuka in turn questions Knight growing independent and suspected he was preparing to create a rival brand. This partnership, which was once built on mutual enthusiasm, began to unravel into mistrust and legal threats. Eventually, Onitsuka, sensing Blue Ribbon's growing success, decided to cut Knight out and take over US distribution themselves. It was a betrayal. Years of hard work vanishing overnight. Knight was absolutely devastated. He then decided that if they were going to pull the rug out from under him, then he'll build his own rug. He rallied his small team and started a new brand all over again. They called it Nike, named after the Greek goddess of victory. The name came from a dream from Jeff Johnson, one of Knight's earliest employees and the first full-time Nike hire. And then came the logo. Knight commissioned a graphic design student from Portland State University named Carolyn Davidson. She was working on campus and earning a couple of bucks an hour, but Knight told her he needed something that looked like motion. Carolyn then sketched out a few ideas, and among them was a simple swoosh. Although Knight wasn't blown away, but they were on a tight deadline, so he picked it anyway. He then paid her $35 for the design, but years later, as Nike soared, he gave her stock in the company, and is now worth millions of dollars. Nike's first major innovation came from Bowman, the waffle trainer. One morning, while eating breakfast with his wife, Bowman looked at their waffle iron and wondered what would happen if he poured rubber into it. That moment sparked the creation of a sole with unique grooves that could grip surfaces better than traditional flat soles. Bowman believed traction was key to speed, and he tirelessly tested prototypes with his runners, sometimes even tearing apart shoes and gluing new soles on by hand. His experimental sole patterns gave runners a grip like never before, reducing slippage and improving performance. Athletes began to notice the never-before innovative sole reducing slippage and improving performance. From that, Nike started growing not just in size, but in reputation as an innovator in performance. Still, the road ahead was brutal. The breakup with Onishuka spiraled into a long and bitter legal battle. Each side accused the other of breach of contract, and the dispute drained time, money, and morale. Cash flow was a reoccurring nightmare. Knight often scrambled to meet payroll, sometimes even having to ask employees to delay cashing their checks. Warehouse piled up with unsold inventory, creating more financial strain. Every day felt like a fight to survive, but with each setback came a deeper resolve. Knight wasn't just building a company, he was forging a mindset, one that lived in a tension between ambition and adversity, one that said, keep going. In the 1980s, Nike signed a young up-and-coming basketball player named Michael Jordan, a college standout with raw talent, charisma, and the makings of a generational icon. At the time, Jordan wasn't even interested in signing with Nike. He wanted Adidas. But Nike made an aggressive creative pitch, offering him his own signature shoe line, something no company had done at the time. That pitch turned into the launch of the Air Jordan line in 1985. The shoes sold out instantly. The Air Jordan redefined what footwear could be, not just performance gear, but personal expression, cultural currency, and aspirational style. It wasn't long before the swoosh became more than a logo. It became a global badge of ambition, youth, and self-belief. And it stands out now. Nike is operating in more than 170 countries, and the company worth over billions of dollars. This wasn't just a story about business, it was a story about belief. About starting when you have no map, no investors, no guarantees, just the fire to do something different. Phil Knight didn't start out with power, he built it. Piece by piece, he did it. And in doing so, he gave the world more than just shoes. He gave us a slogan that cuts to the heart of every dream worth chasing. Just do it. So if you're sitting with your own wild idea, unsure where to begin, remember this. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to begin. Even if it means selling shoes from the back of your car. To those who dream of starting their own business but feel overwhelmed by obstacles, Knight's story offers a simple but profound lesson. Just do it.